Hello, welcome to the Sideboard here at the Star City Games Players Championship, brought to you by Ultimate Garden Carnox Chairs. I'm Nick Miller alongside Edgar Magalhaes, one of the yearly point earners. How you feeling coming into this event?
Feeling good, Nick. Feeling confident.
You had a very stressful end of the season to get in, but a solid invitational finish kind of locked you up for it. How did you test for this event? Who'd you prepare with?
I prepared with Matthew Dilks. The too many Lotus Box guys qualified for this event, so we ended up splitting up. So I just tested with my my good friend. I've been playing with him for many years. We've been testing together. So
a lot of success with him this year. The one deck you guys are on the same page with is the standard deck. We're going to be talking about Jund Sacrifice. This deck obviously took down the Mythic Championship last weekend. Looks to be kind of the deck to beat, has all the stuff going on with it. How do you feel about the deck?
Feel really good. I think the deck is pretty inherently powerful, and I think it has the tools to beat anything in standard as long as you tune it properly. You just got to make sure you're set up to beat the right matchups. You can't beat everything every weekend, but I think you can beat anything on any given weekend. Okay, and how was your standard testing? Did you go through a lot of decks, or were you pretty on this deck for most of the time? Yeah, we did a lot of iterating. We started with Fires. We tried some ramp variants, and then we tested a little bit of Flash after the list on the Mythic Championship got posted. But the entire time the Cat deck was on the back of my mind. It was my front runner from the beginning, and although I tested other things to just check my own biases, I ended up staying on here because it felt like the best deck. Okay, before we get into the cards, this deck is complicated. There's a lot going on, and a non-digital client. Have you put in your reps? Because there's going to be all these triggers going on, and how are you prepared for that? Yeah, there's a lot going on. I did most of my testing on Arena. It makes it a lot easier, obviously, because all the triggers are done for you. But I made sure to get a lot of goldfishes in paper just to make sure my reps are and my mechanics are crisp. It's very complicated, and you got to make sure you're highly focused throughout the entire game, which is definitely a downside of the deck, if anything. All right, well, let's jump into it. The main part of this deck, we're going to see the front half here is the Cat, obviously, with Cat Oven. We've got the Cauldron Familiar. This 1-2 punch is sort of the engine of the deck, and then you have everything else that goes around it. Right. Talk about the importance of that part, and then how the rest of the deck works around it. So the Cat and the Oven together, they don't by themselves win very matchups on their own. But what they do very effectively is they buy a lot of time, and they make all your other engines much more powerful, which we'll see later on. But just having those two cards in conjunction is very important for almost every game. But you need more going on at any stage in order to press forward with your advantage. Right, we have the Gilded Goose here, getting you more food, ramping. The other big inclusion is the Beanstalk Giant. When I talked to you earlier, this was kind of the game changer with the Jund Sacrifice deck, allowing you to get up to Casualties of War and doing all the things the deck wants to do. Right, yeah. Usually you would see Paradise Druid in the slot, and then Canister for the Mythic Championship decided to play Beanstalk Giant as well. And when I saw his list originally before the tournament even started, it made a lot of sense to me. The Paradise Druids, although sometimes they're effective with your Massacre Girls, usually they're more of a liability than anything, just because the deck is so mana hungry. And if they ever die or get swept up by your own Rats, then it usually ends up being a downside for you, not an upside. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide here. Corvald. A lot of people saw this as the Brawl card. Didn't get a lot of attention at first, but now it's kind of the key top end to this deck. Talk about all the things this card does. Yeah, so my friends know that I'm pretty prone to hyperbole. Most Magic players are. I've been referring to this card as Grizzlebrand the entire week, and it's honestly not too far off. When it enters the battlefield, you can draw at minimum 2 or 3 cards, and sometimes up to 7 and 10, depending on how much of the engine you have in play already. And if you ever untap with it, the game is virtually over. It's very difficult to lose. It's honestly kind of wish I played the 4th copy. It's kind of hard to justify, and you have so much card selection that usually 3 is enough because you can find them pretty reliably. But honestly, one of the better cards in the deck, and one of the cards that utilizes that engine I was talking about earlier, the Cat in the Oven. Small drains, incremental, it's fine, but whenever you stick this in play, each Cat and Oven you have in play is an Ancestral Recall, so it's a pretty huge deal. Yeah. Massacre Girl, just a sweeper hanging out on a creature here.
You have the selection, as you mentioned, so you can get away running one copy, and when it shows up, it's game breaking.
Yeah, we hedged our main deck in order to beat Fires and the Mirror, and so we reduced the number of copies of this. It's really nice to have access to one because you can see so much of your deck on any given game, and especially with open deck lists, I'll know early in the game whether or not you want to take it off a Trail of Crumbs or for instance. So the first copy I think has a lot of value, but decided to move the rest of the copies to the sideboard.
Right, Mayhem Devil, kind of the key to the Jund sacrifice theme here. This is what gives you the payoff for doing all of the stuff you're doing. Just shoots down so many things we saw at the Mythic Championship. You can just snowball a game out of control, and then there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Right. Yeah. The main thing from Mayhem Delval was definitely the board control. This is your card advantage payoff, and this is your stabilization payoff, and definitely one of the biggest upgrades to Jund over Black Green. And with all the blue green decks around in the format, the Flash and the ramps, this card is very difficult for them to take off the battlefield. It's only Aether Gust, which is a temporary solution, and it really is really good at managing the board, managing Nissa lands, picking off planeswalkers, etc.
Okay, we'll get to the next page here. Brontodon, this is your hedge, as you mentioned, in the main deck. You've got the 3/4 that can deal with fires. What was this taking the spot of?
Canister only had 2 copies of this. You can see as low as 1 or 0 in the main deck in some lists. We decided to play 3. It's over a ramp spell and a Massacre Girl, basically, or a Wicked Wolf, whatever you would play in that slot, some sort of top end creature removal, and a ramp spell compared to Canister's list. And that was our hedge for the Mirror and for the Fires decks. We felt like tailoring our game 1 towards a bad matchup and towards what we thought was going to be the most popular deck was more important.
Okay, Murderous Rider here, your removal spell of choice. I've also heard tale of it being an anti-decking measure. Is that come up really, or is it just something people throw out there?
I think people just throw it out there. It doesn't really come up that often, especially with Corvold on the deck. It's pretty trivial to finish off games when you've gone that far in.
Okay, Casualty of the War is just the sledgehammer at the top here. What are you doing with it specifically?
It's specifically as a really blowout card in the Mirror. It's good against Fires as long as you can manage their snowballing effects. Sometimes you don't draw Brontodon, but then as long as you don't get Fires into like double Cavalier, then you can Casualties can manage the board pretty cleanly. It's kind of an awkward card because it's really bad against the Flash decks, but I feel like since it's the only card that you can't find off your Trail of Mysteries, it's really important to have a high quantity of them because it's kind of the card that's most difficult to find in the matchups that you really need it.
Okay. All right, we'll get to the next page here. As you mentioned, Trail of Crumbs. Here's the oven. We've been talking about that all deck tech. What all does Trail of Crumbs do? Because I see this card and it just does it all, it seems like.
Yeah, it's just incremental advantage, right? You can, basically any stage in the game, even if you don't have Cat and the oven together, it's going to help you find it because with your Gilded Geese and your other fruit producers, you can, even just the Trail itself, you can just crack the food, 3 manas, and get a free sleight of hand out of the deal. And it just lets you churn through your deck. It lets you find all the answers. It lets you find all the threats. And really gives you maximum selection and very incremental advantage. The thing about this deck is that no deck is really going to beat you going late, with the exception of maybe the ramp deck. And as long as you can keep the game low to the ground, keep everything stable, then this is going to pull you ahead of the game at every stage.
All right, the mana base here is a lot of dual lands, but you also have a castle or a couple Castle Vantress, Lochtwain hanging out, yeah. And then Fabled Passage with the sweet synergy Mayhem Devil as well.
And Corvold as well.
All right, so we'll move through here to get to the sideboard. Duress, this card, if it's in Standard, it's in black sideboards, it seems like. What are you looking for here with this?
So this is very much a concession to the Flash decks. Some people play Drillbit in this slot, which is better against the Fire decks, but since we hedged our main deck towards the Fires matchup, we decided to really make our sideboard hammer against the Flash matchup, and this just always being 1 mana is very important. Being able to double or even triple spell against those decks is how you make sure they don't snowball against you, and that's kind of just the only way that they can ever beat you.
You got your extra copies of Massacre Girl here. Lovestruck Beast, take us through what this is doing.
So this was kind of just a failsafe in case we were wrong about the metagame, in case anyone decided to show up with an aggro deck. It was a very tempting card to cut from our sideboard, but if anyone ended up showing up with an aggro deck, try to size up the meta a little bit, then this would have been an important card to have. And it's also part of our plans against the Fires matchups as well. Just the 5/5 is difficult for them to deal with. They have to Justice Strike it basically, which paves the way for our Kobolds on turn 5.
Okay, we'll move through the rest of the cards here. Thrashing Brontodon, number 4. We've got Noxious Grasp, a field full of every deck being green. Seems pretty good.
Yep.
And then extra Murderous Riders here. And then on the last page, you have the other food card, Wicked Wolf. Is this just basically another removal spell for you? Or
it's not a removal spell. It's also a difficult card for some of the green decks to deal with. It's difficult for them to take it off the battlefield. It can stabilize the ground very effectively. But that's mostly what it does. The Noxious Grass and the Murderous Riders on the previous page were, again, a concession to the Flash matchups. We felt that if they weren't able to stick a Nissa or the Wolf, the Nightpack Ambusher, and keep it on the battlefield for multiple turns, it is very difficult for them to beat us. And making sure we have maximum instant speed answers to that was very important.
The number 1 deck in terms of popularity is the Ramp deck. What are your considerations to that deck?
It's a tough matchup. We didn't really expect that in high numbers, but I believe that the Master Girls can help a lot. It's although they amass a bunch of mana, they generally try to build a big board in order to set up a big hoof, whatever it's called.
And raise 4 runners.
That's the one, yeah. And if you can Master Girl to cleave the board pretty easily because of their Risen Reefs and their Gilded Geese, and really regain tempo and turn the corner quickly, it's difficult for them to set up again. So that's going to be our game plan probably.
Okay, well, you had a lot of pressure on yourself to get here. Now that you're here, how are you feeling, and what are you expecting?
Feel pretty good. I don't have to worry about any quarterfinal matches, luckily, so I can dodge the curse. But I like my preparation. I feel confident about all 3 of my decks, and I'm hoping for a good weekend.
All right, well, good luck to you, Edgar.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to Star City Games all weekend long for the action here in Roanoke.